Hello there! As some of you know, I'm sure, I'm an English major, and in one of my classes recently we've been talking about multimodal composition. Now, what this means is it's the idea of expressing your ideas through different mediums. Now, what I mean by this, generally in education, when we teach people to express themselves, we teach it in writing, black and white text on a page. And this is kind of odd because there's various other ways you can do it. It used to be that speaking, oral instruction, was kind of the primacy, and fairly recently it's changed over to being that writing is what we teach people to do, and we consider that universal now. Writing is just considered like, if it's there, it's, perfect. Your idea is explained exactly the way it's supposed to be because it's in nice, good writing. But that's not necessarily true. The writing we teach is generally academic. I mean, we don't teach people how to write for magazines. We don't teach people how to write emails, texts, tweets. Any of this stuff we don't currently consider part of the writing we teach. Likewise, we don't teach people audio-visual. We don't teach people music. We don't teach people to orate. We don't teach people to do things on video, animations. All of these things are kind of overlooked. But they can all be used, and I think that they should be. So when thinking of how I would do a lesson on musical characterization, this is basically what I've come up with. So let's talk about this. Musical characterization. How would you use music to describe a character and give them aspects strictly through a musical sense? And in this case, we're only doing instrumental music. We don't need to put words to it. So, first of all, let's just talk about what I mean by musical. Now, I mean this in the sense of Western music, and, it's more global at this point, but I'm talking about these notes. They've kind of been developed as part of the Western tradition. It's not universal. There's other countries in which they use different notes. They will have less or more. Some people have quarter steps. Some people only use pentatonics. And so really, I am talking about music based around this. However, most of you watching this video will have experienced this in that you have watched television, you have walked into a store to go shopping, and you have seen these things before. And by seen them, I obviously mean hear them at this point, because it's everywhere. It's impossible to get away from music, whether it's, someone driving through your neighborhood and ghetto blasting something at 4 a.m., or, someone literally whistling a song. All of that you hear probably is using this same music theory. So let's talk about our tools specifically here. This is a piano. I hope you've seen one before because I'm not going to explain how it works. For now, all you need to know is that each one of these buttons I press makes a note. Now, the notes go from low to high. So if I press a note down here, it's lower. If I go up anywhere to the right, it will only get higher. Likewise, if I go down to the left, it only gets lower. And that is true of anywhere on the piano. It always gets higher to the right, lower to the left. This has already given us a way to express ourselves with music. Generally, something that is smaller, delicater is going to be better played up in high registers. And you can hear this kind of small, delicate sound. If I play the same thing, that is a, bigger feeling. When you play it down there, it's more grandiose. It's also a little bit more disturbing when you have something played quite so low. It sounds big, ponderous is probably the best word I could use for it. So those are just general notes. Now, when we play a multitude of notes at the same time, it's generally called a chord, and there are exceptions to this, but let's just assume they're chords at this point. And let's work on three, because those are ones we're going to be using today. So first of all is a major chord. And this one is really inundated in our culture. We even have words to describe. That is ta-da! It's positive, it's happy, it's triumphant, and it gives you this feeling of positive emotions generally. When you have a major chord, it's kind of uplifting. Now if we change one of these notes down, we have a minor chord. And this, a lot of people would say is sad, but I don't think it's necessarily sad. It's more negative. I will give it that. But it could be angry, it could be fearsome, it could be disappointed. But it's certainly a lot darker, a lot more negative than the positive, happy major chord. Now, one more step, if we lower one more note, we get this. Which is the mustache twirling, I've got a girl on the train tracks chord, also known as the diminished chord. Now, this one is even more kind of evil than the minor chord in that it's really unstable. It almost sounds bad. We want it to go somewhere else. So, a diminished chord makes us uneasy. Now, in the old days, in the Middle Ages, they did not play this interval, which is part of a diminished chord. This is called a tritone, and it sounds kind of weird. They actually thought that if you played this enough, it would physically hurt you. Your teeth would fall out if you listened to a bunch of tritones. So this belief is fairly old, and it does carry like visceral understanding to us. So the last part is going to be chords, scales. Now, what you need to know about scales, I'm not going to go over a bunch of different, there are major and minor scales, but I'm only going to teach you the difference between, these are diatonic scales. I'm skipping a bunch of notes in here. If I don't skip any notes, this is called a chromatic scale. Now, once you have chromatic motion, it generally brings a weird kind of playful and also strange sense to a song. So you'll notice, like, just playing this, it sounds like the Looney Tunes thing. If you're going up, it's like an elevator going up. Likewise, if Wile E. Coyote falls off a cliff, it goes down. But when you put in a song, for instance, if you have like a happy sound and you put in a chromatic melody, you get clowns. And so it's like it's happy, but there's something wrong with it. If you just play a regular major and major chord, major scale, it's less weird. So when we bring in the chromatic, we bring in elements of unease. Alright, so we've got our tools now, and we've got notes. Now let's talk about things that aren't necessarily just the notes we play. So we have rhythm. Rhythm is the order and quickness that you play your notes in. So let's take these two notes. The rhythm I just played is pretty simple. We could change this. We could play it faster. We could play it slower. And all of these convey things. Slower things tend to sound kind of more easygoing. Faster things are more energetic, get up and dance kind of stuff. Now, we also have other rhythms. I mean, we can play things in more complicated patterns to give it kind of a salsa feel, or... And, you know, the the variations on this are infinite. You can play it in a million different ways, and each one will kind of have a different feel. But generally, just pay attention to faster and slower in this. Now, another thing that we could also play the same notes loud or soft. And this is another easy one, like loud, big, strong, deep, surprising, soft, relaxed, quiet, delicate. Now, the last thing before we actually get into making music here is articulation. So articulation is how you play a note. By that I mean, that is a long, strong note. That is not. That is short. That is sharp. And these different ways of playing the notes is kind of how you get a style out of something. You can play the same thing, and it sounds different if you articulate it differently. So, using all of these things, I want to characterize something. I want to make a character or make a song reflect a character, and I want this to be really obvious so that you can all tell what's going on. So I'm going to use a character from a video game and basically show you how a song would reflect this. So I'm going to use a really exaggerated character. So I'm going to use a character from the video game League of Legends, in this case Annie, and I am going to video magic in a couple pictures of her right here so that you can tell what I'm talking about. Now, you've seen her. Now, this character kind of has a very simple and yet weird dichotomy to her, in that we have a cute little girl. I mean, young, feminine, she's got like pink on, cat ears, that kind of thing. So cute. Then she's also got this big old demotic, pyromaniacal bear that's, gigantic, hulking, evil, and kind of fairy tale-y. It's all tongue-in-cheek. And the whole thing, I mean, pyromaniacal teddy bear, it's a contradiction. The whole thing doesn't quite blend together, and that's the humor behind this idea. And that you have these kind of polar opposites in the same thing. So it's almost a joke in itself. It's also very playful. We're not talking about something that is grimdark and serious. This is something that is kind of light and goofy, if you will. So I want to make a song that describes this character. So let's get started with how we do that. So first of all, ostensibly, since we're dealing with a little girl, I don't want to start with something that's very low. I want to start with something that's high, up here. Also, I don't want to start with something that's very, very loud. I want to start with something that sounds innocent and delicate and young and all of these things. So I'm going to play up here. So for a melody, we might do something like... We're also using the major. And it's soft. But it's major to diminished, so it's a little weird. There's a little... So that's the first part of this song. And you can see it started off very soft, very simple. And although it didn't technically go major or minor at the beginning, it implies that it's major. It doesn't actually play the note that lets you know what it is at first, but you automatically kind of assume it's major. And so it's got this small, major, happy melody, but then there's the weird, like, it's going from major to diminished. And it's not super weird at this point because we're assuming it's going back to major, so nothing very weird is going on. But then we have a chromatic motion, and that's what really clues us in that something is wrong there. It sounds odd. It's also going down, which brings us lower in the keyboard, which is going to bring us to a more maniacal place. So... it sounds like it's going to go down and something bad is going to happen, but we have a reprieve with some Harry Potter nonsense in here. So this is a blend of major and minor chords, and it's going forward, so we're moving a little faster than we were before. The melody, da-da-da-dee-da, da-da-dee-da, is much faster moving than da-dee-da-dee-da at the beginning. So we're moving along, and this is kind of a transitional. Also, we're still moving down in the keyboard. We're getting somewhere, and that somewhere is a lot darker than where we started. So... So we're playing the same thing, but I've moved the left hand down so that we can get down lower. So, you saw there was a weird building point in there. Right after we did the same thing, we did this. So that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, that's another chromatic thing. It's uneasy and you want it to go somewhere, but this time we're building up from really low. This is way, way lower than we were before. So... that is building up to something strange and weird, because the right hand is actually... that doesn't sound bad in itself, but when you add this chromatic motion, so we've changed. Notice the melody has changed to. So where it was major diminished before, now we have minor diminished. And you'll notice it sounds a lot darker, a lot eviler. So in this case, we've moved down and we have a louder, more powerful, darker melody. So there are hints of the lighter part in here, but we generally have this stronger, lower melody. Now the melody is similar. We have similar notes here. We've just changed from major to minor. This gives us the character idea. So it's almost the same thing. It's almost the same person, but we've moved from light to dark, from, you know, innocent little girl to pyromaniacal little girl. So, in this point, we also have this, to remind us. And then so here we are going between literally major and diminished. But we're doing it in different octaves. So we're playing the major happy points way up here. The chromatic weirdness down here to make us feel uneasy. But we're putting them together very close so that it sounds like the same thing. It's a duality. And then, again, happy. And so this is the thing, when you play both major and minor at the same time, doesn't sound good. They don't cooperate. Likewise, when you have two notes next to each other, it sounds kind of bad. You want it to. It sounds uneasy. It's the tritone all over again, but scrunched together. So that note in the end is supposed to make you cringe a little bit. And again, this is part of the darker theme. So this would be the, you know, eviler side of our nature. Now, getting into the teddy bear, so this is the lowest we've gotten, and this is the teddy bear part. So the Harry Potter nonsense before is the same chord changes as we're using here, but we've kind of inverted things. So in all the times before, the melody has been above the harmony, the accompaniment. So at this point we've reversed that. The melody is actually the lowest notes, and the right hand is actually just playing a simple accompaniment. So we also have this kind of galumphing feel. So again, this is kind of fairy tale like. It's teddy bear-y, but it's still got this weirdness in it. So we have the tritone diminished, and that should sound weird. And it does in this sense. It also has the articulation. Dum, da, dum, da, dum, da, dum. It sounds very... I'm just going to pull a Lewis Carroll here and say galumphing. You know, it's something that's trundling through the forest, and it's big. It's big because it's loud, and it's big because it's played as low as it can possibly be played on the piano. So, this is basically the giant, you know, demonic teddy bear part. So this is a transition to get back to where we started, and you'll notice minor, right? Powerful, dark, low on the lower part of the keyboard. After that, major, and the higher part of the keyboard softer, lighter, more positive, and that brings us, so minor, major, back to the beginning. Dun dun. So, once it gets back to the happy part, it's weird because we have memories. So we knew what happened in the song. We knew that it's going to go from happy to this weird, and we have this memory of that melody being crashing and big. So once you get back up to this weird innocent part, it's a very strange deja vu, where your mind's thinking like, wasn't this evil and strange a second ago? So it's made to make you feel kind of odd about the character, which is, I feel, what you should about a character like Annie. You know, it's this, you know, doesn't quite mesh, almost to comedic effect. And the end of this is, like I said, major and minor chords don't play well together. That's major, minor, both at the same time. And if you listen, I don't know if you can really hear it now, but it will actually oscillate between those two as the resonances actually try to sort themselves out based on the notes you play. So anyway, this is how I would characterize someone. So again, to recap, we've got the notes, just individual up and down. We've got the chords that we play, major, minor, diminished, which are positive, negative, and respectively. We've got diatonic scales, which kind of sound musically right. They fit with the chords. And we have chromatic scales, which don't quite fit with the chords. They sound Looney Tunes-ish or like clowns. Remember that one. We've also have rhythm dynamics and articulation, which is, you know, the order the notes are played in, the rhythm it's played in. If you were to take away the notes and just play a drum, that would be the rhythm. The dynamics is loud and soft. And once again, that's big and small to deal with a character. And lastly, articulation, the style in which you play it. Is it sharp? Is it very round? Is it smooth? And how it fits together. And this is how you can actually express a character. So when using something, and this isn't just making music, when using your own music, when putting something into a song or a presentation, think about what you're going for. What are you trying to convey? And especially if you're using something to attempting to convey character, really consider your choices of song and use this criteria to judge them. Anyway, this is how I would begin to teach a class in multimodality. And an assignment you might do if you were teaching, have a character, or have everyone choose a character and find a song that reflects them. And, you know, not composing it themselves, but just thinking of a song and then explain how. Don't just say, like, oh, you know, I think AC/DC's Back in Black would be really good to describe Sherlock Holmes because he's a cool guy. No, actually look into it, look into the different points. You could even create an annotated video where you have little pop-ups showing like, oh, well, this is the point that I think this reflects his cunning, his drug addiction, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And I think people could actually learn a lot from this. A lot more than simply, you know, writing book reports forever in black and white text that no one's ever going to read. So anyways, if you have any questions about this stuff, leave them in the comments below, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. And yeah, thank you, and I'll see you guys later.